Now, I spoke last night about how Labor claimed their new policy doubling tax concessions for wealthy super accounts. They said this wasn't a broken promise. But even though it's not going to take effect until 2025, it turns out it will be legislated this term of Parliament. So they say they're taking it to an election, but the problem is they're introducing the legislation now. They're not waiting until after the election to actually pass the law. Here's Finance Minister Katie Gallagher admitting this on ABC Radio National today.
But it will take a government, if that, sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but if someone else was elected, like the Liberal Party, they'd have to repeal it. So it's actually, it does take them having to be very active about taking it out of the system because you're building it in before an election.
Yeah, and we've made the announcement that that is the government's policy decision. That's the decision we've taken, and now we would legislate that. What future governments do on that, whether the opposition, if they were elected, want to change that, yes, they would have to repeal that if, you know, we get it through the Parliament this term. But I think it's normal practice for a government that's made a decision that requires legislation to then legislate and make it clear that that is the government's policy and we intend on implementing it.
All right, to break this down for us, let's bring in columnist for the Daily Telegraph, Piers Akerman. Great to have you with me tonight, Piers.
Great to be on your very meaty show, Sharri.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Now, thank you. Now, I want to get your opinion on that because Labor claimed this wasn't a broken promise. It wasn't going to take effect until 2025, but the legislation is being passed now.
That's right.
And even if they lost the election, it might not be possible for the coalition, depending on the Senate makeup, to actually repeal the laws. Katie
Gallagher's got it completely wrong there. It's not the democratic process to break a promise. It's not a democratic process to legislate for something which you've explicitly said that you weren't going to introduce, even though it's not going to come in until 2025. And in doing so, Katie Gallagher joins Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers. And, you know, we thought there were 3 stooges, but there are actually 4 stooges. And these are all people in important policy-making positions. And now none of them can be trusted. This move on superannuation, and there's an old Middle Eastern saying, I think, when the camel gets its nose under the tent, you know, you can't prevent the whole camel coming in. And people talk here of the thin end of the wedge, but this is socialism getting its nose under the tent, and it's bound.
You're referring to how they want to direct the union funds to spend the members' money or invest the members' money in pet projects, housing, social housing.
That's just a part of it. The whole super setup, which was a Labor thing, is a grand superannuation club for senior retired politicians and union officials. I mean, they're in there on huge salaries.
Massive salaries.
Massive. And now they're directing your money, my money, if you're in their super fund, back into trade unions who are using it, as we know, to get the Labor Party re-elected. But it's not their money.
Yeah.
It's not doing anything for your future or the person who thinks he's putting money into a retirement fund.
Now, there are reports today, Peter Van Onselen and Simon Benson as well, both in The Australian, that there are growing tensions or a rivalry, as Simon Benson put it, between the Federal Treasurer and the Prime Minister.
Well, I don't think that Chalmers was smart enough to realise that Anthony Albanese is a dyed-in-the-wool, hard-left socialist. I don't think he saw that far because Chalmers was brought up under Paul Keating during Paul Keating's more enlightened stage as Treasurer when he was a reformist. And Albanese is anything but a reformist. He wants to drag things back in moves that really echo Gough Whitlam's wildly fantastic socialist dreams for the Australian nation.
I want to ask you about another topic, moving on to foreign affairs. Peter Dutton has caused some controversy by saying that Australia shouldn't be taking the British submarines. Instead, we should be taking American ones.
Well, I think that's pretty logical. The British submarines actually use, to a very large extent, American components. The question is, why would you go to a supplier who's going to another supplier? Why not go to the source? Now, Britain only has one facility building nuclear submarines. It's my understanding that their order book is full. America has two. One up in Groton, Connecticut, the other down in Newport News in Virginia. And there is pressure within the US for a third nuclear submarine building facility to be opened. And that would give Australia to move up the line, because at the moment the US Navy is actually, it's got its order books choked up, but they're trying to get a development on the current Virginia class. They want a new submarine, a better submarine, a real predator submarine, and this is occupying their minds. So if we could get the Americans to sell us a couple of their submarines with their technology without going through Britain, and then encourage them to build a third facility, which would hasten our builds, it'd be the right thing. The thing that strikes me as absolutely stupid still is that anybody wants to build a submarine in Adelaide.
Yeah, well, exactly. Malcolm Turnbull did, that's for sure. Piers Akerman, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Sharri.